Let's start. I was telling that Yuri will share some advice and tools and strategies that can help us or help to improve our political campaigns, initiate and dialogue between different opposing parties, and enhance your reach with your targeted groups and audience. So the Palestinian civil society, as well as governmental organizations, both face many obstacles that limit their ability to access international venues and build wide networks across the globe. However, these organizations can utilize their digital platforms and media channels to build partnerships as effective as those built through face-to-face meeting outside the digital world. And we are only a few months away from the Palestinian election, which will be held for the first time in the era of social media and the digital world. How do we build political campaigns that can successfully attract our target audiences? What should be the focus of our campaigns? How do we improve communication? And what are things that we should avoid as we build our campaigns? Yuri Schnoller is the co-founder and managing director of the Cosmonauts and Kings, a German startup that has become a leader in the field of database digital political communication. He has previously worked in political campaigning for Angela Merkel and the former president of the EU Commission, Jean-Claude Juncker. And I'm Marwa from Hamle, an activist and digital rights defender, specializes in changing policies, social media campaigning, and content writing. So again, for the translation, use the link in the chat box. We also recommend that you send your questions on that chat box, and we will respond and address requiring subject in the Q&A section towards the end of the workshop. Welcome, Yuri, and thank you all for joining us. Yuri, please go ahead.
Yes, hello, good morning, everyone, and greetings from Germany. I am very deeply sorry I cannot be in person with you. I wish that this would be the case, but nevertheless, we're going to use the way technology helps us these days to connect. And of course, in the few minutes that we have to talk a little bit about the issues that were just mentioned. So I'm going to just share 1 second my screen. I hope you can see it. Yes, should work. You know, when talking about best practices for campaigning, and more importantly, also the question of how we can use it after, not just in this COVID crisis, but how will trends change. This is something that we deal on a daily basis. So I run a company, as mentioned we're nearly dealing with all matters around digital communication campaigns. We also work for the German Ministry of Health currently in the COVID crisis and many others. So this is something that is deeply to our cause. We want to help to advance democracy into the digital age. So when we talk about digital campaign trends, you know, one thing is important, especially after the US election. Everyone understands something differently, right? Like some people say, okay, you know, TikTok is a big trend. Some people want to talk about targeting, some others about data collection, others about viral content elements, etc., etc. Big problem, it's like blind people touching an elephant, right? Everyone else sees something different and wants to talk about something different when we talk about digital campaigning. Some focus more on the structural side, like data analytics, some more on the visual haptic side, like content, engagement, community building. So one important thing we have to understand first is that we cut through the noise by differentiating. We need to know what are the, let's say, layers when we talk about practices and where we need to improve. So first thing, you need to know that there's 3 layers when we talk about digital campaigning that are of relevance. Structure, strategy, and communication. Structure is the more internal look, right? How we look at workflows, capacity building, processes, tools. So all the things that you need in order to communicate successfully. And this is something, especially when you're talking in elections, as are you looking ahead, where you have an issue, you know, not like in the US or other big political parties with millions and millions of euros and people to follow, but just a very limited amount of budget, just a very limited amount of time you can dedicate to your political campaign. So you need to understand that, you know, it's super important to know how you can recruit volunteers or people, engage them in workflows that work. And more importantly, what are tools, either, you know, be it in a Google Drive suite, be it Canva, content creation tools that help you save time and help you save also resources, and be it from a landing page builder to anything else that just are the structural foundation of your digital communication work. And above that are strategy and communication layers. So strategy is everything that connects to the question of how do you get to your goal? How do you get to the point where you can engage with voters? On which channels? What kind of target groups do you want to engage with? How do you want to build up reach on your social media presences? Like the question of how. And then comes the communication layer, that is the question of why. So of course, of what are communicative occasions that you identify in the coming days and weeks that you want to be present with? What does your visual identity look like? What is the actual content you post via Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, whatsoever? Like, how does it look like? What is a reduction planning, content creation planning looks like? And how do you engage with your communities? What are frequently asked questions, and so on and so on. So this is just important when we talk about trends. We need to know, are we talking about structure layer, strategy layer, or communication layer? Okay, please keep that in mind when we talk later about those elements. So first thing is, you know, it's about capacity building. It's very boring, and it's from a best practice standpoint, nothing like super fancy, but it's the most important element of any campaign that is out there these days. And at the heart, it's about enabling teams or volunteers, multipliers, to ensure that, you know, they can share the message across social media. And this can only happen if you have a core team, or let's say a core team of activists that are deeply equipped, not just with the tools, but also with the content they can share across the channels. So how does it work? When we talk about what are kind of roles that can be played, of course, this is just an ideal image and picture of like a ideal, let's say, war room team in a campaign. But, you know, some elements are very important. Like, you need to have someone in your team, or at least if you're doing it by yourself, like some sort of skills where someone knows, okay, how can I create a good content piece for Instagram, you know, with graphic design and that kind of stuff, ranging to, do we have someone in mind that is good with copywriting? So, you know, writing text that involves, engages, etc., etc. So, of course, a larger campaign is ranging from a very local race, from just a single candidate, to more a movement or a party or an NGO. The larger the, let's say, requirements get, right? At some point, you need to have for instance, a search engine optimization strategy. Like, what do when people write in Palestine, search something on Google? Like, can you be on top #1 with your search engine results, and other elements, ranging even up to legal and IT questions, hacking attacks, etc., password infrastructure, analytics lead, analyzing your social media performance. But all of this, you know, just increases with time the more people and resources you have, of course. So at the very beginning, it's about content creation, it's about copywriting, and it's about knowing where your target groups lay. Second element is that we see a messengerization in the political discourse. So what does it mean is that we see, you know, a lot of political discourses moving away from, let's say, Facebook feeds, Twitter feeds, into Telegram, WhatsApp, Instagram group chats, etc., etc. So it's getting more and more, you know, personal one-to-one connections, and less on the timeline feeds. So this is just one example that we did in Germany, where we built for ministry like their own Telegram channel, because this platform has been exploding in Germany. So it's about a community building even in the messenger channel. So you need to think about how can you use those messenger channels, what kind of content is resonating well there, and how can you create snackable and shareable videos, content that is specifically designed to be shared via messenger channels. So, you know, it's not about huge communities in terms of many likes. It's about three things that are important when we talk about community building. It's about a common set of values. It's a common set of joint actions. So what are our values? What do we want to achieve with this group or with this campaign? And what is our purpose? So what exactly, not are we just trying to achieve, but what purpose do we trying to add to solve a specific problem that is of societal relevance to the Palestinian community? So these kind of three, let's say, sets, values, joint action, and purpose are important when we talk about real community building and how can this be achieved and how can be ensured that, you know, at the end of the day, it's not just anonymous like collection on Instagram, but more importantly, a real community that serves with purpose and that tries to engage with people. Thirdly, it's about funneling in terms of targeting approach towards people. One thing is important, right? Like we need to get down with our messages and approach potential voters and interested like-minded people with the stuff that we are trying to achieve. But it's about funneling. So a political engagement funnel looks basically in 4 steps. It looks a bit different than the typical marketing funnel where it's about conversion just in terms of like you're clicking on an ad and then you buy shoes or you buy clothes or whatsoever. So, you know, generally we talk about 4 steps. It's about awareness, it's about consideration, it's about the conversion, and then the loyalty. So in short, see, think, do, care, meaning first, the most important rule is I need to show you content that you see and that you don't swipe away, right? So think about your own behavior on Instagram or on Facebook. You continuously swipe, you know, across your timelines and your feeds. So I need to develop content that sticks, that creates resonance, that creates awareness. And the attention economy itself is a phrase coined that, you know, showcases we need to have good content. That's really important. So if you don't have an awareness, you can't engage with people and make them think to consider potentially voting for you, potentially getting engaged with your organization, potentially signing up to become an activist. So only if you create content that at least creates a short amount of attention, you know, all the other steps are not important. So everything that either is it an Instagram story or a short tweet, it's about reducing complexity and using it as an attention trigger. An attention trigger is something that not cannot entail everything in your political program, but uses this with humor, with excitement, with joy, with hope, whatsoever. But you need to have some sort of emotional attachment in order to showcase people. You know, this is something they truly want to engage with, they are interested in, etc., etc. And then we can deepen down the layer and say, all right, you know, if we know people consider they might potentially be voting for us, then we can at some point, what we call retargeting, we can go down and say, look, do you want to sign up? Do you want to get engaged? Do you want to become an activist? Like, let's join board. And they're on an emotional level so much more likely to join your cause. So, and the last step then is, of course, creating loyalty, right? Like people that are already enthusiastic about you, they want to see that you have specific content for them. They want to see that you create content for them. Like in the campaigns we used to run, you know, it was about, okay, does the head candidate at some point once a week do an exclusive Instagram live with her supporters, or do we do a phone call where, you know, we call the most engaged volunteers and thank them for their hard work? But it's about specific loyalty programs, some similar like companies do, and translate them into politics. Yes.
Maximize the presentation.
Oh yes, sorry.
Thank you.
And in a specific example, what does it mean? Of course, this means that when we talk about video views, like just from a technical standpoint, right? And we want to, no matter if it's Instagram or Facebook, like I don't want to get too much into like, let's say the business targeting logic behind it, but I can only attract more people if I know what content people are resonating with. So please, if you have a time, one important skill, crucial skill today as a digital campaigner is to know how Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok, and LinkedIn, whatsoever, targeting structures look like. So one recommendation I can give you is definitely to sign up for the Facebook Blueprint Academy. It's completely for free, similar to the Twitter Flight School. These are two, let's say, designed platforms that are sole purposes that you can do specific courses. You become a Facebook marketeer. You can learn how the structures, the fundamental logic looks like. And then, for instance, in this case, you can create a specific funnel, meaning here I showcase video to a specific target group. Then in the ad platform, I can create a so-called custom audience, meaning all the people, let's say in Palestine, that have watched this specific video, right? And then the algorithm analyzes the socio-demographic and psychographic factors of this audience. And then we can create a so-called lookalike audience, meaning Facebook or Instagram, I mean, it's one platform, looks for a statistical twin on the platform and it's looking, look, these are people that it's very likely to create resonance with the content. So it's definitely worth pursuing, and definitely something you should look into. Because, and then we come to the fourth point, one thing that is definitely a trend becoming increasingly important is predictive monitoring, not prescriptive, meaning describing monitoring, but like monitoring that looks ahead and tries to anticipate what are important communicative occasions that are of relevance. And the problem is there's so many monitoring tools out there, right? Like a gazillion tools where you can, you know, basically track everything from mentioning, from conversations, like what are the tonality, when are people posting when at some point about what about it. But important at the end of the day are 3 questions. And this is something that, you know, this is why I'm not promoting one specific tool, like from Talkwalker to Brandwatch to Google Suites to Facebook Analytics, etc. There's so many out there, but at the end of the day, data and monitoring and intelligence helps you only if you ask 3 questions that are important. Like, what should I do in terms of like, is there anything that, you know, helps me make a better decision-making process based on data? Where and when should I go in? Meaning, what conversations are happening right now in Palestine, in your relevant communities, where say, you know, this is something where I should have a say, where people should know this is my message and this is where I want to have something meaningful to say. And then potentially, what is the simulated outcome of a communicative action? Meaning, like, do I know, will it be anticipated in a positive or negative manner? Like potentially resonating in a shitstorm or not? And one tool that helps you with that is the so-called communication prioritization matrix. And this is something you should always consider when thinking about, let's say, communicative action, like communicating towards a specific issue. And we have 4 quadrants. It's about avoiding, investigating, considering, and prioritizing. And depending on the cost and risk, and of course, the value and the effort one has to put in, meaning risk, like is it potentially reputational damage ahead? Like, do we see a specific value in terms of like, you know, to the brand? And do we potentially know case that, you know, this is something where we need to have a proactive and immediate stand. So these 4 quadrants help you in terms of like knowing, okay, do we see a specific layer where we want to take action right now, or we'd rather avoid? Because not every communicative occasion is something you got to go in, you got to communicate. It's important to differentiate and to know when it's good to communicate and not. So from a, let's say, rapid response process, or just an idea of knowing, okay, is it something I should go in or not? It's about 5 steps. It's about analysis, evaluation, decision, production, and then targeting. So analysis is what I just described, and then we have three criteria, basically, knowing, okay, like the conversation that is happening to a specific issue, like how far does it spread? Is it something that is a trending hashtag or a topic that Palestine right now is talking all over the place, or is it just in a very small community, but this community is very relevant to me? And this is even in terms of the impact, how critical the situation is right now. Is it developing? Is it important that I showcase that I have, just something very, very relevant to say? And who is the sender? What is the potential political impact? Like, is it a conversation I can immediately connect into, or is it something I should rather wait? Like, these are just the criteria that each and every one of you just needs to individually define for themselves. And then I need to make a decision, right? I need to know, yes, I think it's important to go in, to communicate, to craft messages, to create content, or no, I'd rather wait and I continuously monitor the situation. Then we talk about production, going on Canva, going on other things like creating tweets, creating, let's say, video content, etc., that needs to be fast, quick, approachable, consumable, snackable. And then we talk about targeting, meaning like I want to reach out to the relevant stakeholders in my WhatsApp groups, on my Instagram feeds, etc., And this process in general, like, is something I can always test and improve on to ensure that I'm fast, that I know how quickly I can use, this kind of funnel in order to ensure that my message gets out, that my message hits home, and that my message, is resonating with my constituency and with my community. So because we want to take some more time, of course, to take questions and to debate with you, I just, as a third point, I want to give you 3 reading recommendations that really are of high relevance to you. One is about political entrepreneurship, how to build successful centrist political startups. It's by actually an Austrian author who wrote about a political startup project they did in Austria. It's very interesting, especially if you have not a lot of resources and you don't have a lot of time and there's not a lot of money. Very recommendational to read and to consume. Second, as a standard, let's say, publication, it's the Oxford Handbook of Political Communication, where a lot of theories, but also a lot of very interesting thoughts in terms of like communication psychology are in. So if you're interested about the matter, please make sure to consume that book. It's all available also as an ebook. And the third one is Crisis Communication Management. It's a very practical, step-by-step guide in case you feel like, what are the specific elements. So this, guys, was basically just as a kind of fall ideas that I want to recommend you to use. And lastly, before we get into questions, it's just important that there is no perfect campaign strategy, and especially when we talk about global campaign strength, right? The American political system is very different from the German, and it's also very different from with you guys in Palestine, because the situation are different, the target groups are different, the culture is different, the way people use social media is different. So there's a lot of variables that are, have to be adjusted. So at the end, it comes down to you guys to put everything into practice and to practice. That is the most important learning that I have done in my past 10 years in campaigning. It all comes down to collaboration. And with my workshops that I've done with the Adenauer Foundation in many countries across the world, the biggest problem that we have in political campaign structure is they're run top-down hierarchical. There's one campaign manager and everyone is just like, yes, sir, yes, sir. And there's no real collaboration structure that can create creative, innovative ideas. But this can only happen if you let it happen in terms of a collaborative process to let the best ideas flow, to have a creative mindset about especially social media, especially about digital channels, and not let the guy, from the top just always say, yes, yes, we execute them. Because you know what? You're the experts. You know how to communicate on digital channels, not the old politicians do. And this is something, we need to understand. Good inspiring, motivational content that happens for a reason in terms of, you know, people want to be part of your campaign, people want to join in, people want to become you know, active. That can only happen with trial, testing, and sometimes failing. And a failure culture, a healthy failure culture, is in campaigning very important. To accept that maybe one day, you know, people are giving you shit about a video and it wasn't not really hitting home. It's okay, as long as you learn from it. Learning is the most important thing in any campaign. There is nothing like a perfect campaign practice. And lastly, it lives from you. It lives from constantly innovating, constantly developing new ideas. Only then a successful and best practice campaign can happen for your country. So these were a couple of thoughts and points I wanted to raise, but of course we're here today to discuss and to, you know, use the time to engage. So I think we have another 15 minutes. So I'm very happy to take your questions, and of course you can, you know, connect with me on Twitter or LinkedIn. If you have any other further questions or interested in more material, please reach out. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Yuri. Thank you so much for the valuable tips and the best practices in political campaigning and communication. The first question I want to ask you about, if you can tell us about the difference between targeting local and international audiences. I don't know how you are familiar with the Palestinian situation and audiences, but what's the difference and what we should focus on when we planning a local campaign or an international one?
Well, of course, that's why I said at the beginning, like, you know, this is why I rarely use, let's say, you know, these typical best practices with the, you know, the US campaigns traditionally, because honestly, these are campaigns that have multi-billion dollars fundraising infrastructure and campaign in place. Even in Germany, I mean, it's a ridiculous small amount of money. So I think the more local I get, the more focused I am on just like me, my constituency, my neighborhood, my block, you know, the more realistic I need to be about my resources, because in campaigning, you only have always these three resources, right? It's time, it's money, it's people. These are the three only things that you have. Like everything else is, you know, like this is the foundation. And usually you don't have money, and time is very crucial, of course, but people, this is your most important resource, because there's nothing more powerful than a room with 10 people that are enthusiastic to change something for the better, that are enthusiastic to create a positive impact on their community. So what I would recommend is, you know, before you do anything and talks about, you know, best practices, it starts with really honestly having a good volunteer infrastructure and a good communication plan. So either if you do it on Slack, if you do it on a WhatsApp group, if you do it via Google, like you need to organize volunteers. They need to know what should they do, you know, what are the next steps that can be achieved, etc., etc., etc. So organizing volunteers is super crucial. And secondly, of course, the more fragmented the media atmosphere is, and the more problematic it is to, let's say, cut down with your message, the more it lives from people, humans, that want to share their message and already have maybe potentially a strong voice. So who are the influencers in Palestine? Who are the people that have already a saying, that share your values and that can, you know, amplify your message, either here or abroad with the diaspora, that can help you grow your audience? Because again, the ultimate currency in a digital campaigning environment is, of course, attention and reach. Because honestly, you can have the best content, you can have the nicest videos, you can have everything. If people are not watching your content and not seeing it, you're not taking place. That we live in an attention economy. That's how everything on digital is framed. And secondly, you need to have a goal where you say, look, this is something we want to move toward to. And you know, this is something any organization can do if you have 2 people or 2,000. And so I highly encourage you to start what you have and focus on people, human interactions, because I have seen many campaigns with a lot of money failing because they didn't have the people with the right heart and the right mind in place.
Can you kindly elaborate further on your views on creating, calibrating and measuring impact of snackable messaging in particular? How do you see is the best approach currently for targeting the EU and the EU member state governments on Israel or Palestine human rights issues? And how do you contrast that with US targets, i.e. Biden admin and US Congress?
So for the first question, you know, in terms of like snackable messaging, meaning I have 3 steps, right? I have, let's say, content that is solely created to attract attention. And then I have content that deepens the link with my target group. And when I know people click on that, they you know, appreciate maybe more content. So meaning if I have a debate or a discussion, you know, maybe I only use a good 2 or 3 sentences as a teaser. I put them with a nice music in an Instagram story. And when I know people click on it, they land on the entire 60-minute video or something. So I just need to, often in politics, we make the mistake that we push out all the messages, but we don't differentiate between, okay, maybe the content is too complex to just push it out entirely, but I need to you know, reduce it to something that sole purpose is to attract attention. And when people come on my landing page or go on YouTube and they click on the ad or they come on that, then that's so to say the second layer. And second question, in terms of like the targeting governmental officials, you know, like, of course, in terms of like, let's say the precisiveness, LinkedIn is the most precise tool. If I want to say I want to reach out to members of European Parliament or let's say staffers of specific parliament, then LinkedIn offers me, let's say, the most detailed targeting option. However, you should know that political advertisement that, let's say, has a specific goal to influence a specific legislative process is not allowed on Twitter and also not allowed on LinkedIn. That's one of the learnings after Cambridge Analytica. So I would rather encourage you to look, depending on the country you're targeting. So for instance, if I would speak about Germany, right? And you say, look, I want to bring the issue of Israel-Palestine human rights issues more to the table. Who are currently, not just in the political spectrum, but also maybe in the media sphere, influencers, people that already are well-known, reputed, and connected, that I can reach out to via mail and say, look, could you imagine doing a live Instagram live talk or a YouTube conversation with one of our activists, and we invite a couple of journalists or like someone writes about it. This is, I think, more promising than using social media targeting to use that. So I would always go, let's say, with multipliers and potential stakeholders, and then build, let's say, a base of sympathizers in the respective countries that you can reach out to and update them with content that you have.
Thank you. Another question from Helga. She asked about, in our case, the Palestinian narrative is not so joyful, and we don't have so joyful news. So how we can transform the negative into something positive to tell our narrative and our story? And the other question is about, if you can please give us the best tools to organize campaigns among participants from different countries while protecting the anonymity of someone of some of the participants?
Yeah, so I mean, I don't need to get into a specific Palestine issue. Like in Germany, the mood right now is pretty grim too in terms of COVID. So I think like this is a issue overall. I think we have, right? Like, of course, it's, I would say, much different from country to country, but overall, the social media is disproportionately like showcasing negative emotions and showcasing dispute and hate and like with the filter paradox on that we have, etc., etc. It's very tempting for campaigns to use negative images, negative emotions, and showcasing people what they hate, because furious anger, hate, frustration is a very strong, powerful trigger to get active or to showcase your emotion than it is with positive feelings. That's always the problem with negative versus positive campaigning. However, in the mid and long term, I think it's the most important thing that, you know, what one famous campaigner once said, David Axelrod, anger is a good breakfast, but a very bad dinner. And only joy and hope get you through the day, and especially let you fall asleep peacefully. Meaning, in a more concrete matter, that you can only build a sustainable community and a successful campaign with people that share a specific vision towards something. You know, like we've seen with the Trump movement and others, like if hate and anger are the only things that keep you together, you're never able to deliver a good policy. That's what we saw with all the populists who were in power, like the populists in Austria or others. The moment they get into charge and are responsible for policymaking process, we realize they can't get anything done. So I know it's very, you know, there's no satisfying answer for that, but I think that it's for the sake of contributing with a campaign to a positive mood. It's something we need to continuously try and find and identify something that gives people meaning, that gives people hope, because the world is already a bad enough place. So why should we add to that? I see here there's another question. No, what's the best tool to organize campaigns?
Yes, the other question was about the best tool to organize campaign among different countries.
Yes.
With our anonymity and like the privacy of the participants.
Good question. So, I mean, of course, I would always, depending on what, let's say, you define as organizing, right? I mean, Google Drive is still, in terms of file sharing and encryptioning, etc., a very safe space. But, you know, like the problem is in terms of organizing, depending on the specific, like, let's say, goal, are you trying to organize in terms of like more like a file share, or are you more like on a communicative push, like for instance Telegram or other Threema or other encrypted messenger channels are of course very good in terms of like, let's say, having everyone in place and be very quick on communicative action. However, in terms of organizing a crowd, it's pure chaos, because people can all write and, you know, it starts to get very messy. So I would recommend always split, like having a group for, let's say, a more communicative focus, where in some sort of messenger that is safe and encrypted, and maybe people can use acronyms or something, or like a second number if that's of relevance. The moment you get more an international context, like I mean, there's a gazillion, let's say, organizing tools out there, but still, for instance, what I would recommend, what we recommend a lot of campaigns, is Monday.com. Have a look at it. It's very simple and good project management software where you can assign a lot of people to specific tasks and et cetera, et cetera. So I see we have only 1 minute. Okay, but you know, there's a lot of tools. There's not one single answer, but for communication, I would use a messenger channel, and for organizing, I would use a tool like Monday.com or Airtable or something else.
Thank you. We still have 2 minutes, so if you can give us, before ending the workshop, like 4 points as a summary, or what should people do, like a summary in 4 points to the people, what they should focus and avoid in digital campaigning?
Sorry, come again? I didn't hear the last part.
If you can give us a brief summary of the workshop that the participant can remember.
Yeah, so, Rome wasn't built in a day, your campaign won't be either. So, don't let yourself set back if there's failures. I mean, honestly, there is nothing like a perfect campaign. I've been working in many campaigns and there's fuck-ups, there's failures everywhere. So don't get demotivated by that. Secondly, build capacity and try to do stress tests in terms of like workflows, processes, because when shit hits the fan and you have a real crisis, then you know how your team can organize and how you can get stuff done. Thirdly, look at tools that can help you save time and save efficiency. It's about your tech stack. Your tool infrastructure is so crucially important. So share best practices among NGOs and among candidates. And lastly, I would encourage, times are pretty grim right now. We have the crisis with Corona, but I'm very sure if we have enough young, motivated people like you guys that don't accept the status quo, but work on a better future, we will have one. So
thank you so much. Thank you so much, Yuri, for joining us, and stay with us, please, for the next workshop on news coverage of digital rights issues at 1 p.m. Now I want to ask the participants to please fill out the evaluation to help us improve our forum in the next years. Thank you so much, Yuri. Bye-bye.